Take a moment and listen to these quotes. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say, think. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. How does it help to make troubles heavier by bemoaning them? The whole future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately. And finally, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Over the next 4 weeks, our community enters an important look, an important exploration at the philosophy of Stoicism. When you hear the word Stoic or Stoicism, what comes to your mind? Is it of a emotionless Mr. Spock type person who just has a stiff upper lip during difficult times? Man, is she stoic. Someone who simply plows through difficulty without any expression. I hope that by the end of these 4 weeks, if that's your view of Stoicism, that we've completely renovated it. And if you have a sense of the philosophy, I hope over the next weeks, you're able to deepen your appreciation for the philosophy of Stoicism, the path of Stoicism, and to practice some of its important elements in your everyday life. I'm Dave Fleming, Senior Leader at Aldea Spiritual Community. Welcome to More Than a Stiff Upper Lip, Understanding and Living the Stoic Way. This 4-part series will look at some of the fundamentals of Stoicism, why Stoicism matters for 21st century living. We'll talk to a few experts in the area of Stoicism, as well as a team that talks about favorite Stoic quotes, these little tic-tacs that freshen our life. Today, though, we're going to start with a core element of Stoicism, something that's often not talked about, but is at the heart of the philosophy. If you're joining us for the first time, you've just found us, welcome. Thank you for taking time to explore. Grab some friends. You'll notice on the page where you're likely watching this on our webpage that there's a reflective guide that you can download and use as an on-ramp into a deeper reflection for yourself or with a small group. There's also an aftercast where we explore more deeply some of the continued conversations that we have with other people. And there's a meditation you can also use to center yourself, ready yourself for this time. So whether this is your first time with us or you've been with us for quite some time, thank you for taking the time to be with us at Aldea Spiritual Community as we explore what it means to put love at the center of our lives and live lives of wisdom, meaning, and purpose. Before we dive in to the principles and the wisdom of Stoicism, it's important first to put Stoicism, as well as so many other traditions, into a particular frame. Let's call this the frame of the wisdom path. The wisdom path. I'd like to define a wisdom path as a set of wisdom principles that one organizes her life around in order to experience a well-lived life and to project that life, to manifest that life in the world. Now, there are all sorts of wisdom paths. One could argue that religions are wisdom paths. There are philosophical wisdom paths, like Stoicism, which isn't actually attached to a religion, but has many of the same kinds of qualities when it comes to applying wise action and thought to life. In fact, you're going to see over the next 4 weeks that many of the principles of wisdom in Stoicism can also be found in a variety of religious paths and other philosophical traditions. Why is this? Well, at one level, the reason that we see so much of the same wisdom, and by wisdom we mean knowledge that is translated into action that makes a difference in how we live every day. So much wisdom is ubiquitous, transcends a particular religious or philosophical tradition because human beings have come to discover it by living it. And this gets us to living a wisdom path. Now, I want to make just a couple of comments about wisdom paths and then share with you 3 wisdom path elements that are part of any wisdom path. And actually knowing these elements will help you take any wisdom, any tidbit of wisdom, and better utilize it in your own life. So first, a wisdom path is not a religion. A wisdom path is not a religion. And what I mean by that is this: you don't have to believe a certain set of metaphysical dogmas to live a rich wisdom path. Now, let's take Christianity. Christianity has beliefs attached to it, just like Hinduism, just like Islam, just like Judaism, and so forth. And there are dogmas in religions. In Christianity, for example, at least in sort of the center of Christianity, both Protestant and Catholic, there's the idea of a heaven and a hell. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody inside that Christian tribe believes in that or believes it the same way. But there is a doctrine of heaven. Let's start there. Now, if you're in that Christian religion, there is a danger that occurs when people, leaders in a religion, let's just stick with Christianity, conflate the ideas and the dogmas of the religion with the life practice of religion. So, for instance, you could say, according to how I'm defining a path of wisdom, you could say, I live in the wisdom path of Jesus, and not believe any of the dogmas attached to contemporary Christianity, like heaven or hell. Or could I be as bold as even saying believing in God? Could you live the path of Jesus without believing in God? I want to say yes, you could. Because a wisdom path is about understanding insights that can be translated into action that change for the better who I am and how I express my life in the world. So, for instance, Jesus taught in parables. He told a story one time of when you arrive late to a banquet and there's only a seat way at the back of the room. Just sit there. Don't try to argue that you were supposed to sit next to the guest of honor. Don't do that. Just sit in the back. Then if the guest of honor wants to bring you forward, well, then you are being invited to that place rather than asserting it yourself. Wisdom, I mean, that's just good wisdom, right? It's just good wisdom about diminishing pride and arrogance in favor of humility. Now, you don't have to believe in a heaven or a hell or even God to practice the wisdom Jesus was talking about there. Religions often conflate, they bring together their dogmas with a way of living, with their wisdom path. But I want to suggest to you, you can separate those. That's why Stoicism is also a wisdom path. In fact, Stoicism has many similarities to other types of wisdom paths, other things found, again, in all different religions. Let's go back to Christianity. There's a sense in the New Testament, in the book of James, where the writer says, hey, don't just expect your plans to turn out the way you want them to. Even your travel plans. Don't expect that. You should say, if God wills it, it will happen. Now that would be melding a belief system in God with a life path piece of wisdom, right? But in the Christian world, it's blended. Here's the life path piece. You shouldn't take for granted that you're going to even have tomorrow. So put your trust in whatever God wants to have happen to you in that moment. Now, in the Stoic tradition, it goes like this. You could leave right now. Memento mori. You could leave right now. So let that determine how you act, how you think, and how you talk. Now, notice that is void of a religious dogma, but they're really the same idea. I want to suggest to you today that there are lots of religious people who believe in the dogmas of their religion, but they're not practicing the wisdom path of their religion or any wisdom path. You can believe in certain metaphysical dogmas about God or angels or you name it, that, by the way, there are no external proofs for, right? These are things that even those of the faithful in a religion will say at some point you have to take it on faith. So I think we need to be really careful when we start to propagate a dogma that we cannot empirically prove. Are you able to believe something that you cannot empirically prove? Sure. But to require it as entrance into a wisdom path is sectarianism. Something that creates all kinds of dangers. You can only be faithful to the wisdom path if you're also faithful to the beliefs that are attached to this particular religion. I want to separate those two and say an atheist can live a deeply spiritual life, while a Christian might not live a spiritual life at all. Now, the reverse is also true. An atheist might not in any way be living a wise life or taking the path of wisdom. And a Christian might believe things that you might find strange, but you see in the way they live that wisdom shines forth. That's why belief in something other than this world and a path of wisdom need to be separated in our lives. Live your path of wisdom. Create a path of wisdom. Stoicism is rooted in this idea that a healthy life, a well-lived life, a happy life is centered on a wise path, a way of living every day, a way of expressing life every day that enables you to make not only the most of your life, but to shine something forward that's attractive to people around you. What is your path of wisdom? Let's talk about the three elements of a path of wisdom. So what are the three elements of a life path? Well, let's name them: contemplation, practice, and participation. Contemplate, practice, participate. So let's talk just a little bit about each one of these individually. But remember, they go together. They're fundamentally linked in your wisdom path. They're like the stones lining the path that help guide you deeper into a wisdom path. You're doing them as separate actions, but the sum total of them becomes more than any of those actions by themselves when you start to really live an indivisible wisdom path. But for sake of understanding them, we pull them apart. So let's talk about them. The first one is contemplate. Contemplate. So to contemplate means to look thoughtfully over a period of time at something. So it's not just a quick glance, it's a thoughtful glance where you're examining the angles of something over time. So contemplation also does have a kind of spiritual quality to it, that I am in a place where I'm doing the looking, not just for enjoyment, but in some way to create more of a sense of learning about, so that that learning brings me to greater wisdom in my life. So this is not just pure information acquisition. When I contemplate, I'm contemplating so that I am more receptive to insights that can lead to wisdom. So you could contemplate a tree. You could contemplate a passage from a particular book. Or you can contemplate your life. And this is where we really get to the power of contemplation in a wisdom path. Contemplating how I behave, contemplating how I'm acting over time. It was Socrates who said the unexamined life is not worth living. So if I am on a wisdom path, one of the telltale signs will be that I am contemplating how I'm behaving and the effect of that behavior on me and those around me. So as sometimes we like to say, this is first person contemplation and first person looking at myself and how I'm behaving. Let me give you an example. A couple months ago, I'm waiting for my wife to pick me up at the end of a day. She has the car. During the pandemic, we decided we really didn't need two cars. So we got rid of one of our cars. The lease was up, and so we just didn't get another car. And it just works better for her to have the car during the day. So most nights, I walk out, she drives up, I get in the car. All is well. But this particular night, I put my stuff down, I sit under a tree because it's not too bad out. I sit under a tree and I begin to read and I begin to wait. And a few minutes go by. And then a few more minutes go by. And now something is starting to happen to me. I'm starting to feel a little tense about the fact that she's late. And then something pops into my mind. I see where I rate today. Okay. I wonder how late she's going to be. I wonder what she's doing. I mean, what's more important? These are thoughts that then start to come one after another, after another, after another. You know this feeling? And then those thoughts get bigger and have potentially more consequence to them. And they go something like this. I'm never late when I need to pick her up from somewhere. And if I happen to be the smallest fraction of time beyond the moment I said I would be there, don't I always immediately text? So you'll know, where's my text? Where's my text? Now, I want you to know that as I'm doing all this, there's nothing wrong. I'm sitting under a tree. It's quite lovely out. I'm reading. The world is fine. But I'm stuck on the fact that my wife is late Just to get to the punchline, she was probably 15 or 20 minutes late. But no, I didn't stop there. Then I started to think, well, I wonder where this really, suggests that the importance of letting me know and picking me up on time really is in her mind. I wonder how much she's just taking me for granted. I wonder how else she might be taking me for granted. I mean, I don't take her for granted. So you see, now what I'm doing is the twin towers of justifying my anger and my self-righteousness. Ever done that? Please say yes. Yeah. And now I'm feeling both pissed and righteous. Several more minutes go by, and now I have a full-blown case of let me tell you a thing or two about being late. There she is. There's the car. I stand up. I pick up my stuff. I walk over to the car. I get in the car. She says to me, I'm so sorry for being late. I lost track of time. I'm very sorry for being late. And I said, no problem. No problem? No problem. Now, not only have I added to the dysfunction that overtook me, that allowed me to both justify unnecessary anger while sitting under the tree and unnecessary self-righteousness, but now I have added lying to the portfolio of missteps. Fast forward a month or two later, it happened again. It happened again. And this time, when I got in the car, after avoiding going down the self-righteous and self-anger road, she said, I'm so sorry I was late. I said, I got to tell you, it just feels a little bit, you're taking me for granted when you do this. And I said, I'm not even sure that's fair, but it just does. And I don't want to lay something too heavy on you, but it just feels that way. Just shoot me a text. And she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. You know what? You're right. You're right. I should have done that. I got to tell you, my wife takes me for granted so infrequently that it was probably not even necessary for me to say anything either time or think anything either time, but just simply to be in the moment I was in. But instead, within a matter of minutes, everything changed for me. And my ability to walk a wisdom path disintegrated. Because first, of a momentary fleeting thought that was just floating by, she's late, that I grabbed and made a case out of, a story out of. Now, if I'm living a wisdom path, I am going to contemplate exactly the story I just shared with you. I'm going to contemplate that. I just contemplated for you out loud what contemplation should look like if I'm interested in my own transformation and change. I actually have to go back and look at how I'm behaving and the subtle little moods and emotions and things that influence me and thoughts that I grab a hold of and create a story around. I have to contemplate those. And by the way, I have to contemplate the opposite as well. When did I do something well, that is in line with the values of my wisdom path? And how can I do more of that and less of the other? Now, let me just say this about contemplation. When you contemplate your life because it's part of your wisdom path, you are willing to take a hard look at your behavior. You are willing to take a hard look at the words you think, the words you say, the feelings you harbor, and the actions you display. You become sensitive to those things. And you notice patterns in your life or one-offs in your life that are having an effect on you and an effect on others. Why do I behave the way I do? And is there something that I should do to shift my behavior so that it's better in line with the wisdom of the path I declare is a part of my life, are the organizing principles of my life? Do you contemplate your life and understand why you behave and think the way you do? Contemplation is an examining of life, an examining of behavior, an examining of emotion, an examination of things. Not so I become self-aggrandized in my own looking so deeply at myself that I lose the sense of everyone else. No, actually just the opposite. I contemplate myself in order to better ground myself in humility and live the wisdom of my path, whatever that is. Now, the wisdom of my path has grace at the middle of it, graciousness. But you see, I can't respond graciously in that moment to my wife if I'm harboring a lack of grace the 18 minutes before she arrives. It doesn't work that way. Contemplation is a hard look at how I think, how I act, how I treat myself, and how I treat others. So let's talk just for a moment about the second element of a wisdom path, and that's practice. That's practice. So practice is the ongoing effort to align how I'm thinking and behaving in any moment with the wisdom of the path or paths that I've chosen. So let's just stay with my example of sitting under the tree waiting for my wife. Now, what's the path of wisdom? What are the practices of wisdom that could have helped me in that moment? Well, one is meditation. One is meditation, because when I meditate, I learn about the nature of my mind, and the nature of, in the Pali language, is described as papancha, the proliferation of thoughts that flit about all day long in the mind, and how most of those thoughts that are not being thought intentionally for the reason of focused work or focused attention on my wisdom path should simply be let go. I should simply let them go. And what meditation does is show me, at least one of the things that meditation does, is reveal to me that endless proliferation of thinking. I mean, I just dare you to not think for 60 seconds. You can't do it. It's just not possible for most of us, for most of the time, not to have thoughts moving through our mind. But what meditation teaches me to do is separate from them so that I and those thoughts are not the same thing. Now, that would be a good regular practice for me to do, so that when I'm sitting under the tree, I see a thought go by, and then at that moment I just think, let it go. Just like this is a moment of meditation. Just let it go. Just let it go. Another practice in that moment would be reflection in the moment of action. So I'm noticing how I'm starting to think. I let those thoughts go, and I might ask myself, why am I feeling this way right now? Why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel justified in having this attitude about my wife? And instead, I might practice what Buddhists call a loving kindness meditation, or what Christians might call a blessing, or what Stoics refer to as thinking the best about others while simultaneously working hard on yourself. So here would be a much better practice in the moment under the tree when I'm thinking, really? You're late? Letting that go and instead practicing a loving kindness meditation like, may you be happy, Jen. May you be free from suffering. May you be at peace. Now, I could have just repeated that. If I needed something to get rid of those other thoughts, I could have simply created a meditation moment around a loving kindness prayer or a loving kindness meditation itself, and just done that and practice that. And I would probably notice within a minute that all of that potential gunk that then surfaced and became a story, all of that would never have even surfaced. Because we can only be angry or self-righteous for so long if we don't fuel it, right? You try to stay angry for very long. You can't do it. There's only one way to really stay angry, and that is to fuel the anger. You have to keep feeding it. But if I flip that around and practice something like a loving kindness meditation, the anger just starts to evaporate. Now, if I've harbored anger for years, that's different. Now my practice is going to require something quite different to undo what I've done. But when we're talking about sort of the regular things of life where I have not habituated anger in a situation over years, you cannot stay angry. And practice helps me let it go. It just helps me release it in that moment. Now, one thing we'll talk about with Stoicism is they have a practice of looking at your life at the end of the day and scanning it, like taking the scrubber. You know, when you're watching a movie, you can put your cursor down on the movie and move it faster through a scene. The Stoics say you should practice doing that before you go to bed. So even if I would have done exactly what I did in the first scenario, that night, if I was practicing the Stoic practice of reflecting on my day, I would have gotten to the point at the tree and realized I offended my wife without her even being there. That was offensive. And what am I going to do to shift that behavior so that I don't do that again? Now I'm adding, practicing to a way of living that then enables me to live more every day aligned with those values. No one is going to live perfectly the values of their wisdom path. We're going to blow it. We're going to have times like the ones under the tree for me. That's part of life. We should have less of them. They should be more infrequent over time, and they should last a smaller and smaller amount of time every year. I should really be working to reduce how long I stay in those moments. And over a lifetime, perhaps someone can become enlightened enough in their wisdom path that they're very infrequently moved down one of those inappropriate roads, and they're there for such a small amount of time. But this is my life path. Therefore, if I beat myself up for blowing it, I'm actually missing part of what keeps me on the path. And that is my failure, if I'm sensitive to it, actually brings me back to my practice in a new and fresh way so that I can practice better in the future. The second time, when my wife was late, I did practice better. I said, it kind of makes me feel like I'm being taken for granted. And she said, you know what? I'm so sorry. And it was the end of it. It was over. Now, could you argue that maybe even a better place for me to be would to not be offended in the first place? I think I can get there. Practice or practices are actions I take, sometimes in real time, like right in the moment. Here's a practice. What's beautiful about that one is that can be a real-time practice. I feel myself ramping up in a conversation with someone else, and I do not want to go down that road of anger or self-righteousness, and I might just start breathing. And then I might be saying something in my mind, may you be at peace, may you be happy. Don't go there, Dave. Right? Or sometimes I might pull away and deep breathe for 10 or 15 minutes as part of meditation. My practice sometimes, most of the time, is happening in real time. But sometimes I do need to pull my kayak up on the bank of the river and stop and practice more intentionally. Journaling, breathing, meditating, reading, pondering, reflecting, so that when I get back in my kayak and go down the river and I encounter the various situations and people I'm going to encounter, it is more likely that I will be able to live from that wisdom in the moment. I will be able to draw it out when I need it. That is the power of a wisdom path, but it takes time and it takes flexible repetition over and over for me to first realize, nope, no, I don't want to go there. And then, no, I don't want to go there. And in fact, I'm going to go somewhere else I don't even need to go there in the first place. I can just go down another path. I remember years ago, I was walking in a very busy city outside with one of my friends, and every once in a while, he would just say, no. He would just break out in no, nah, no. And I knew him well. And so after the second or third time of him doing this, I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And he said, oh, that's just what I say to myself when I see a really attractive woman and my mind wants to go somewhere it shouldn't. Because I don't want to objectify her and I love my wife. And he would just say, no. I mean, that's a spiritual practice. That is a practice of wisdom. That is a practice of wisdom. I contemplate to understand the way I lean towards certain kinds of thoughts and behaviors that are opposite of my or toward my wisdom path. And then I practice in real time and up on the bank in protected time. I do certain things, these century after century tried and true ways of behaving that help me bring out the wisdom in the moment. And then finally, the third element is participation. Participation. By that simply, I mean, we've got to get out there and live. We've got to get in the mix. Relationship with people, express purpose in the world, take risks, contribute to the world, fail, learn, rinse, repeat again and again and again. Participation in the world is in and of itself perhaps the most robust spiritual practice, living your life with curiosity and wonder and expression and contribution is part of any wisdom path. But it's the first two elements, contemplation and practice, that take the third one and turn it toward wisdom rather than away from wisdom. Because people can participate, but in very unwise ways. I showed you one of my own under the tree. And that's just one of many, 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 many unwise ways I have participated in life. But as I add contemplation and practice and practices to my life, those begin to shape and help me navigate my life wisdom and my life action and my life thought, all of it into an indivisible way of being and acting that is more in line with the path I've chosen. So you have to live. You have to live. You have to get out there. You have to get out in your own way. It's different for all of us, but you gotta move from leaning against the wall and get out on the dance floor and live and fail and try and learn and contemplate and practice regularly, contemplating your life, examining your life, the way you think and behave, practicing actions that better align you with the wisdom of your path, and then taking those pieces of wisdom and inserting them into the moment as you behave and as you participate in life. I mean, it's an exciting way to live, right? It's an exciting way to live. And it has zero to do with what you believe about an afterlife or a God or a heaven or a hell or anything outside of this realm right now. That's a completely different issue. But wisdom living and walking a wisdom path is meant to help us live this moment and the next one in a way that takes the best insights of the best ways we have learned over hundreds of thousands of years now through evolution, and about 10,000 years or so of social evolution, and really bring that to life in any moment. That I'm getting chills. That's exciting. That makes life an adventure rather than just a drudgery. To bring the best of my wisdom path into the moment I'm living right now. Wow. Now, Stoics are going to help us understand from their perspective, which was limited to their time period, but man, do they have a lot of good wisdom. They're going to help us understand elements of a path that are wise ways of living. Like, hey, you might want to, before you say anything right now, remember that this might be the last thing you say before you die. Still want to say that? Or why is bemoaning your trouble going to make it any less trouble? Or don't just talk about your philosophy, live it. I mean, those are great pieces of wisdom, hard fought and hard won by the Stoics and others. And we'll explore them together over the next 4 weeks. So much anticipation in me for these 4 weeks. Consider how you and what you should do, how you should live a wisdom path, and what you should do to construct one. How is the construction of your wisdom path? Do you have one? And then, if you do, how is its condition right now? And what can you do to better live these 3 elements of contemplate your life, practice the actions and the mindsets that pull that wisdom into your life, and then as you participate, demonstrate that wisdom to yourself and to those around you. Now that is a life worth living.